my wife now.
The crowd roared as her father shoved Mara forward, her naked body trembling by the Arkansas River. 20 years old and sold like cattle. Then, a tall shadow stepped through the mob. Daniel Crowe, 40 years worn and tired. He wrapped his wool blanket around her shaking shoulders and said words that split the sky. "She's my wife now." The laughter turned to rage. One vow, one moment, one lonely cowboy who just declared war on an entire town. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and stay with this story until the very end. Comment below which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this tale travels. The Arkansas River ran brown with spring melt, carrying the sins of 100 towns downstream. Mara Mayfield stood at its edge, bare feet, sinking into cold mud, her father's hand tight around her wrist like iron. 20 years she'd lived, and every one of them had been his to spend. "Step forward," he growled. She couldn't move. Her body wouldn't obey. The wool dress he'd stripped from her shoulders lay crumpled in the dirt behind them, and the morning air cut through her skin like broken glass. 43 people had gathered by the river. She'd counted them. 43 witnesses to her destruction. "I said, step forward, girl." His palm cracked across her face. The sound echoed off the water. Someone in the crowd laughed a short, ugly bark that made her stomach turn. "Gentlemen," her father called out, voice thick with whiskey and false cheer. "As promised, young, healthy, untouched." Mara's vision blurred. She tried to cover herself with her hands, but he yanked them down. "Don't you dare," he hissed in her ear. "You'll fetch less if they can't see the goods." The crowd pressed closer. She recognized faces, the blacksmith's son, the widow Henderson, old Amos Pike, with his Bible clutched against his chest. People she'd known her entire life now staring at her like she was a horse at auction. "How much?" someone shouted. "Starting at 50 silver, her father announced. "Worth twice that, but I'm a generous man." Generous. The word made her throat close. This was the man who'd sold her mother's wedding ring for poker money. The man who'd traded their last milk cow for a bottle of rye. The man who'd looked at his only daughter 3 days ago and said, "You're the last thing I got left to sell." 40, a voice called from the back. 50 or nothing, her father snapped. Mara's knees shook. The mud squelched between her toes. She wanted to run, but where the river behind her ran too fast and cold. The town ahead offered no sanctuary. Her father had made sure everyone knew she was merchandise, not a person. Not anymore. "Let me see her teeth," the blacksmith's son demanded, stepping forward. Her father grabbed her jaw, forced her mouth open. The boy peered inside like she was a mare, then shook his head. "Too skinny. 35. She cooks, she sews, she'll give you strong sons." Her father's voice carried desperation now. He needed this sale, needed it bad. The debts had piled too high, and winter had taken everything but her. A woman spat in the dirt. "Shameful. Selling your own blood." "Mind your business, Martha," her father shot back. "You got daughters. Wait till hunger comes knocking." "I'd starve first." "Then you're a fool." Mara closed her eyes. Maybe if she couldn't see them, they couldn't see her. Maybe she could disappear into the sound of the river, let it carry her consciousness away from this place, this moment, this unbearable reality. 45. Another voice offered, "But I want proof she's virgin." Her father grinned. "Doc Wheeler can verify." "No." The word barely escaped Mara's throat. "No, please." He backhanded her again. Harder this time. She tasted copper. "She'll do as she's told," her father announced. "Well-trained. Obedient. Lies. All lies." She'd fought him every day for 3 days since he'd announced his plan. She'd screamed, pleaded, tried to run twice. The bruises on her arms told that story. The rope burns on her wrists told another. Last night he'd tied her to the bedpost so she wouldn't flee before dawn. 45 going once. "Stop this!" The voice cut through the crowd like a blade through butter. Deep, quiet, certain. Mara opened her eyes. A man stood at the edge of the gathering, tall with shoulders that spoke of decades of hard work. His face was weathered, lined by sun and sorrow. 40 years old, maybe more. His clothes were clean but worn, his hat pulled low. She'd seen him before, Daniel Crowe, the rancher who lived alone in the mountains west of town. He came down once a month for supplies, spoke to no one, and left before sunset. "This doesn't concern you, Crowe," her father said. Daniel walked forward. The crowd parted. His boots made soft sounds in the mud as he approached each step, measured and deliberate. When he reached them, he stopped 3 feet away and looked directly at Mara. Not at her body, at her eyes. "You cold?" he asked. The question was so unexpected, so human, that tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. She nodded. Daniel shrugged out of his coat. Heavy wool still warm from his body. He held it out to her. "Don't you dare," her father warned. Daniel ignored him. "Take it." Mara's hand shook as she reached for the coat. The moment her fingers touched the fabric, her father lunged forward and slapped it from Daniel's grasp. "She's merchandise. You want her, you pay." "I'm not paying." Daniel bent down, picked up his coat, shook the mud off. "I'm claiming." The crowd went silent. "What did you say?" Her father's face turned purple. Daniel stepped closer to Mara. This time, when he offered the coat, he moved between her and her father. She grabbed it, pulled it around her shoulders. The relief was instant and overwhelming. Not just warmth, but covering. Protection. Dignity returning in wool form. "I said I'm claiming her." Daniel's voice remained calm. "As my wife." The crowd erupted. Shouts, curses, laughter. Her father's eyes went wide with rage. "You can't just, that's not how you need to pay. I need to vow." Daniel turned to face the crowd. "I need witnesses. I need God." He looked up at the gray sky. "I got all 3. "This is insane," someone yelled. "This is theft," her father screamed. "That's my property." Daniel's jaw tightened. When he spoke again, his voice carried something dangerous underneath the calm. "She's not property. She's a woman. And I'm making her my wife. Right here, right now." Amos Pike pushed through the crowd, his Bible held high. "Boy, you can't just declare marriage." "Why not?" Daniel cut him off. "You married folks by this river before. I've seen it. 2 people, some words, and God's witness. That's all it takes." "But you haven't paid a dowry, there's no agreement." "I'm agreeing. Right now." Daniel turned to Mara. For the first time she saw something in his eyes that looked like kindness. "If you'll have me." She couldn't breathe. This had to be a trick. Some new cruelty. Men didn't do things like this, didn't stand between daughters and their fathers, didn't offer coats and vows to naked girls in the mud. "Why?" The words scraped out of her throat. "Why would you?" "Because 40 years is too long to be alone," Daniel said quietly. "And because nobody deserves this." Her father grabbed Daniel's shoulder, spun him around. "You self-righteous son of a—" Daniel's fist moved faster than thought. One punch clean and hard, and her father went down in the mud like a sack of grain. The crowd gasped. "Don't touch me again," Daniel said. He flexed his hand knuckles, already swelling. "And you'll never touch her again either." Her father scrambled to his feet, mud dripping from his face. "You're stealing from me." "I'm saving her from you. She's my daughter." "Then you should have treated her like one." Daniel's voice dropped low, each word heavy as river stones. "You want to fight me for her, fine. But understand this, I'll die before I let you sell her like cattle." Amos Pike stepped between them, Bible raised like a shield. "Gentlemen, please, let's discuss this civilized—" "There's nothing to discuss," Daniel said. "I'm taking her as my wife. We'll speak vows right here, right now, or I'll carry her away without them. Either way, she's leaving with me." "Over my dead body," her father snarled. "That can be arranged." The crowd pressed closer. Some faces showed shock, others excitement. Violence hung in the air like smoke. Mara clutched the coat tighter, feeling the world spin around her. This morning, she'd woken up tied to a bedpost, certain she'd be sold to the highest bidder by noon. Now a stranger was claiming her as his wife and threatening to fight her father to the death. Mara. Daniel's voice cut through her spiral. I need to know. You want to come with me, or you want to stay with him? The choice presented itself so simply, so impossibly. I don't know you, she whispered. That's fair? He nodded. You don't, but you know him. He gestured to her father. You know what staying means. She looked at her father, saw the rage in his eyes, but underneath it calculation. He was already figuring how to turn this to his advantage, how to squeeze money from Daniel, how to reclaim his property, how to punish her for this embarrassment. You come with me, Daniel continued. I can't promise you'll be happy, can't promise much of anything except that you'll be warm-fed and free. Nobody will own you. Nobody will sell you. You'll be a wife, not merchandise. This is ridiculous, someone in the crowd shouted. You can't marry someone you just met. Daniel's eyes never left Mara's face. Folks get arranged marriages all the time. This ain't that different. It's completely different, Amos protested. How because there's no dowry? Because her father didn't agree? Daniel's voice hardened. He already agreed to sell her like a horse. I'm offering something better. Her father spat blood into the mud. You're offering nothing. No money, no contract, no... I'm offering her a name, Daniel said. Mara Crowe. That's worth more than silver. The name hit her like a thunderbolt. Mara Crowe. Not Mayfield anymore. Not her father's daughter. Someone new. Someone who might have a chance at life instead of slavery. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll marry you. The crowd exploded. Her father lunged forward, but two men grabbed him. Amos Pike clutched his Bible, looking between them with wild eyes. This is madness, the old preacher muttered. This is mercy, Daniel corrected. He held out his hand to Mara. Come here. She stepped forward, bare feet sliding in the mud. The coat hung down to her knees, swallowing her small frame. When she reached Daniel, he took her hand gently. His palm was calloused, warm, solid. You got the words, Amos? Daniel asked. This isn't proper. The words, Amos. The old man sputtered, flipped through his Bible with shaking hands. I suppose if both parties consent, but there should be time for... No time, Daniel said flatly. Speak the words, or I'll speak them myself. Amos looked at Mara. Child, are you certain? She thought about the bedpost, the rope burns, the 3 days of terror, her father's casual cruelty, the crowd's leering faces. Then she looked at Daniel, this strange, quiet man who'd wrapped her in his coat and called her by name. I'm certain. Dear God, Amos whispered. He straightened his shoulders, found the page. Very well. Do you, Daniel Crowe, take this woman as your lawful wife? I do. To have and to hold in sickness and health. I do. For richer or poorer. I do. Daniel's grip tightened on her hand. All of it. Every word. I do. Amos turned to Mara. And do you? She does not. Her father broke free from the men holding him. She's 20 years old. She's under my authority. This marriage is void. She's 20, Daniel said. That's old enough to choose. Not without my permission. Daniel's eyes went cold. You gave up your authority when you stripped her naked and dragged her to this river. You got no say anymore. The law says a father can't sell his daughter. Daniel's voice rose for the first time. But you tried anyway, so don't talk to me about law. Amos cleared his throat. Actually, the law is murky on the issue of... I don't care. Daniel turned back to Mara. Do you take me as your husband? Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I do. Then it's done. Daniel looked at Amos. Witnessed. Technically this is highly irregular. Witnessed, Daniel repeated. Amos sighed. Witnessed. The crowd erupted again. Some cheered, some cursed. Her father screamed something incoherent, but Daniel ignored all of it. He pulled Mara closer, wrapped his other coat around her as well, and turned toward his horse tied at the edge of the gathering. Wait. Her father stumbled forward. You can't just take her. There's documents to sign. There's nothing, Daniel said over his shoulder. She's my wife now. That's all the document we need. I'll have the law on you. I'll have you arrested for theft. Daniel stopped, turned. His face showed something terrible and final. Try it. Come after us. Bring the law. Bring a mob. Bring whatever you want. He paused. But understand this. I spent 20 years in the war. 10 years after that alone in the mountains. I got nothing to lose and everything to protect now. You want her back? You'll have to kill me for her. Silence fell. Even her father seemed to recognize the truth in those words. This wasn't a bluff. This was a man drawing a line in the mud and daring anyone to cross it. Daniel mounted his horse, then reached down for Mara. She hesitated. Her legs shook her mind, spun, but his hand stayed steady. She grasped it, and he pulled her up behind him with surprising gentleness. Hold on, he said quietly. She wrapped her arms around his waist, pressed her face against his back. The coat smelled like pine and wood smoke. Through the fabric she felt the solid warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. This isn't over, her father screamed. You hear me, Crowe? This isn't over. Daniel kicked his horse into motion. As they rode away from the river, Mara looked back once, saw her father standing in the mud, rage and shame twisting his face. Saw the crowd dispersing, already turning this into a story they'd tell for years. Saw Amos Pike clutching his Bible, looking troubled. Then they rounded the bend, and it all disappeared. Just trees and river and the steady rhythm of the horse beneath them. You all right? Daniel asked after a few minutes. I don't know, Mara admitted. Am I really married? According to God and 40 witnesses? Yeah. Do you really live in the mountains? About 3 hours west. Got a cabin. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and dry. She felt tears coming again. Why did you do that? Told you. 40 years alone is enough. But you don't know me. I could be terrible. You could be anything. He agreed. But you didn't deserve what was happening to you. Nobody does. They rode in silence for a while. The sun climbed higher, warming her back through the coats. The river's roar faded behind them, replaced by bird song and wind through pine branches. What happens now? Mara finally asked. Now we go home. Get you some proper clothes, some food. Then we figure out how to be married, I guess. You guess? I've never done this before. She heard the hint of a smile in his voice. Fair warning, I'm probably terrible at it. Despite everything, she felt her lips twitch. I'm probably worse. Then we'll be terrible together. The absurdity of it all hit her then. She'd been married by a river claimed by a stranger, and was now riding through the mountains wrapped in wool coats, with no idea what came next. It should have been terrifying. Maybe it was. But underneath the fear, something else stirred, something that felt almost like hope. Daniel, she said softly. Yeah. Thank you. His hand came down and squeezed hers where it rested against his stomach. Just once, brief and warm. You're welcome, Mara Crowe. The name still sounded strange. But as they climbed higher into the mountains, leaving the river and the crowd and her father far behind, she thought maybe, just maybe, she could learn to make it fit. The cabin appeared through the trees like a secret kept too long. Rough-hewn logs weathered gray by mountain winters, a stone chimney climbing one-side windows, small but clean. Mara felt Daniel's body shift as he guided the horse toward a small barn behind the structure. Home, he said simply. Home. The word felt foreign in her mouth. She'd had a house once, a lean-to shack her father called shelter, but never a home. This place looked solid, permanent, like it could withstand storms without collapsing. Daniel dismounted first, then reached up for her. His hand circled her waist, and he lifted her down like she weighed nothing. The moment her feet touched ground, her legs buckled. 3 hours on horseback after standing naked in river mud, her body had reached its limit. "Easy." Daniel caught her, held her steady. "When's the last time you ate?" She tried to remember. "Yesterday morning. Maybe." His jaw tightened. He scooped her up without asking permission and carried her toward the cabin. She wanted to protest, to say she could walk, but exhaustion swallowed the words. Her head dropped against his shoulder. Inside the cabin smelled like pine and coffee. One large room with a fireplace, a table, 2 chairs, a kitchen area along one wall. A bed in the corner, just one bed. The realization hit her like cold water. They were married. This was his bed. Their bed now. Daniel set her in one of the chairs by the cold fireplace. He draped another blanket over her shoulders. How many blankets did this man own, then moved to the kitchen area? "I'll make coffee and food. You just sit." She watched him work. His movements were efficient, practiced. He built up the fire, first coaxing flame from kindling with patient hands. Then he filled a pot with water from a barrel, set it to boil. Pulled out bread, cheese, dried meat. Not much, but more than she'd seen in weeks. "You live here alone?" she asked. "For 10 years now." "No family?" "Not anymore." He sliced the bread with careful precision. "Parents died when I was young. Had a brother once. He died in the war." "I'm sorry." "Long time ago." He brought her a plate, pressed it into her hands. "Eat slow. Your stomach's empty, don't want you getting sick." She took a small bite of bread. It was coarse, homemade, but it tasted like heaven. She forced herself to chew slowly, even though her body screamed for more. Daniel poured coffee into 2 tin cups. He handed her one, then sat in the other chair. For a long moment, they just sat there, the fire crackling between them, steam rising from their cups. "So," he finally said, "we should probably talk." Mara's hands tightened around her cup. "About what?" "About this. Us. What happens now?" Fear spiked through her chest. "You're regretting it already." "No." His answer came quick and firm. "No, I'm not. But we did this backwards. Usually folks court before they marry. We skipped all that." "I didn't have a choice." "I know. And I'm not asking you to pretend this is normal." He took a sip of coffee, grimaced at the heat. "But we're married now. That means we need to figure out how to live together." She stared at the fire. "What do you want from me? What do you mean?" "I mean..." She struggled to find words. "You married me. You brought me here. What do you expect? Do you want me to..." Her voice dropped. "Do you want the marriage bed tonight?" Daniel's cup stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down carefully on the floor beside his chair. "Mara, look at me." She couldn't. Her eyes stayed fixed on the flames. "Mara." His voice was gentle but insistent. "Please look at me." She forced her eyes up, met his gaze across the firelight. "I don't expect anything," he said clearly. "Not tonight, not tomorrow, not until you're ready." "But we're married." "So being married doesn't mean I own you. Doesn't mean you owe me your body." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What happened by that river that was about saving you? Not claiming you. You understand the difference?" Tears burned her eyes. "Men don't think like that." "Some men do." "My father said men only want one thing from women." Daniel's expression darkened. "Your father is a liar and a fool. Don't measure all men by his shadow." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Then what do you want? Honestly, I don't know yet. He picked up his coffee again, rolled the cup between his palms. 40 years I've lived, 20 of them in war, 10 alone in these mountains. I've forgotten how to be around people, how to talk, how to... He gestured vaguely. How to be human, maybe. You seemed pretty human this morning. This morning I was angry. Anger I understand. It's the rest I've forgotten. Mara took another bite of bread, chewing slowly. Why did you really do it? And don't tell me it was just loneliness. You could have stayed lonely. Daniel stared into the fire for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough. I watched my brother die at Gettysburg. Took him 3 days. He was gut-shot, nothing the surgeons could do. And as he lay there dying, he made me promise something. Daniel's hands tightened around his cup. He said, "Don't let the war make you cruel. Find something good. Protect it." Then he died. The fire popped. Sparks drifted up the chimney. 20 years I've been trying to figure out what he meant. Thought maybe he meant protect the land. So I came here, built this cabin, kept to myself. But this morning when I saw you standing there... He shook his head. I understood. Finally. Protecting something good means standing between cruelty and its victims, even when it costs you, especially then. Mara felt something crack open in her chest. So I'm your redemption, your way to keep a promise to a dead brother. Maybe. He looked at her directly. Would that be so bad? I don't want to be someone's charity case. You're not. You're my wife. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. He walked to the window, looked out at the mountains. Charity is pity. Marriage is partnership. I'm not pitying you, Mara. I'm betting on you. Betting what? That you're stronger than what happened to you. That you'll survive this. That maybe we both will. She finished the bread, started on the cheese. Her hands had stopped shaking. The warmth from the fire and the food seeped into her bones, chasing away the cold that had lived there for days. Where will I sleep? She asked quietly. The bed. I'll take the floor. That's not fair. It's your cabin. It's our cabin now, and you need the bed more than I do. Daniel, this isn't negotiable. His tone was firm, but not unkind. You've been through hell. You need proper rest. I've slept on worse than wooden floors. It won't kill me. She wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her like an undertow. What about clothes? I got some old things that might fit. Too big, but better than nothing. Tomorrow I'll ride to town, get fabric. You can make yourself proper dresses. You're going back to town after what happened. Have to. Need supplies. And I need to make sure your father doesn't try anything stupid. Fear spiked through her. He'll come here. You know he will. Let him try. Daniel turned from the window. This is my land. He sets foot on it, he's trespassing. And I'm well within my rights to defend my property. I'm not property. I know. I meant the land. He sighed, rubbed his face. Sorry. Words come out wrong sometimes. Mara stood, the blanket falling from her shoulders. She was still wearing only his coats over her bare skin. Is there somewhere I can wash? I feel... She couldn't finish the sentence. Dirty. Violated. Like her father's hands were still on her, like the crowd's eyes were still crawling over her skin. There's a creek behind the cabin. Cold but clean. I'll heat some water, bring it to you. You can wash in private. Thank you. He moved around the cabin, gathering things: a large pot, a cloth, a bar of rough soap. He filled the pot with water and hung it over the fire to heat. While they waited, he disappeared into a trunk in the corner and emerged with a shirt and pants. These will drown you, but they're clean. You can wear them while I'm in town tomorrow. She took the clothes. They smelled like cedar and age. How long will you be gone? Few hours. Depends on whether your father causes trouble. What if he does? Daniel's eyes went hard. Then I'll handle it. The water heated slowly. Mara stood by the fire, feeling warmth return to her body inch by inch. Daniel moved around the cabin, doing small tasks, checking the door latch, adjusting the window shutters, feeding more wood to the fire. She realized he was giving her space while staying close enough to be protective. The balance was careful, deliberate. "Water's ready," he finally said. "I'll take it out to the creek, set up a privacy screen. Give me 10 minutes. He carried the heavy pot outside like it weighed nothing. Mara waited, counting her heartbeats, trying to believe this was real. That she was actually here, actually safe, actually married to a man who seemed to care whether she lived or died. When Daniel came back, his hands were empty. "All set. Follow the path behind the cabin about 50 yards. You'll see it. Take your time. I'll be inside." She walked out into the afternoon sunlight. The mountain air was crisp and clean, so different from the thick humidity by the river. The path was clear, well-worn. She found the creek easily, a small tributary that ran crystal clear over smooth stones. Daniel had set up a blanket hung between two trees, creating a private enclosure. The pot of warm water sat on a flat rock, steam rising into the cool air. Mara stripped off the coats with shaking hands. Looked down at her body for the first time since the river. Bruises on her arms where her father had gripped her. Rope burns on her wrists. Dirt under her fingernails. She looked like evidence of a crime. She started with the warm water, using the soap and cloth to scrub her skin. The soap was harsh but effective. She washed away the mud, the shame, the feeling of being watched. Then she stepped into the creek itself. The shock of cold water made her gasp. But she forced herself to stay, to let the current run over her, to let it carry away everything she wanted to forget. When she finally emerged, shivering and clean, she dried off with the cloth and pulled on Daniel's clothes. The shirt hung to her knees. The pants wouldn't stay up even when she rolled the waist. She had to hold them with one hand as she walked back to the cabin. Daniel was adding more wood to the fire when she entered. He looked up, and something in his expression softened. "Better?" "Yes." She moved to the fire, let the heat chase away the creek's chill. "Thank you." "You can sleep now if you want. You look exhausted." She was exhausted. Her bones felt heavy. Her mind felt fuzzy, but something kept her standing. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "This morning before you stepped forward, what were you thinking?" He was quiet for a moment. "I was thinking about my brother, about his promise, and I was thinking—" He paused. "I was thinking that I'd been a coward for 20 years, that I'd hidden in these mountains because hiding was easier than living, and that if I let what was happening to you happen without doing something, I'd be a coward forever. So you saved me to save yourself." "Maybe. Is that wrong?" She considered this. "I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter why you did it, just that you did." "That's generous of you." "I'm not feeling generous. I'm feeling confused." She sat back down in the chair, pulled the blanket around her shoulders. 6 hours ago, I was naked by a river. Now I'm wearing your clothes in your cabin, calling you my husband. It's too much, too fast." "I know." "What if I can't do this? What if I'm too broken?" "Then we'll figure it out together." "You keep saying that, together, but we're strangers." "So we'll get to know each other." He crouched by the fire, adjusted the logs. "Ask me anything. I'll answer honest." Mara pulled her knees to her chest. "Did you ever want to get married before?" "Once, long time ago, before the war." "What happened?" "She married someone else while I was gone. Can't blame her. 3 years is a long time to wait for a man who might not come back." "Did it hurt?" "At the time, yeah. Now?" He shrugged. "Just another thing the war took from me." "Do you hate the war?" "Every day. But I did my duty. That counts for something." She studied his profile in the firelight. The hard lines of his face, the gray threading through his dark hair, the scars she could see on his hands. Do you think you can love me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Daniel went very still. I don't know. I don't know if I remember how to love anything. That's honest? You asked for honest. He turned to look at her. Do you think you could love me? I don't know either. I don't think my father loved me, and he was supposed to. How am I supposed to love a stranger? Fair point. They sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Outside, birds called to each other in the trees. The normalcy of it felt surreal. I think I'd like to sleep now, Mara finally said. Bed's yours. Daniel pulled extra blankets from the trunk. I'll be right here by the fire. You need anything, just say. She climbed into the bed. It was narrow but comfortable, the mattress stuffed with something that smelled like dried grass and lavender. The quilts were heavy and warm. She turned on her side facing the wall and closed her eyes. Behind her, she heard Daniel moving around. The soft sounds of him spreading blankets on the floor. The scrape of him settling down. Then silence. Daniel, she whispered. Yeah. I'm glad you stepped forward today. A long pause, then quietly. Me too. She fell asleep to the sound of the fire and the steady rhythm of his breathing. For the first time in 3 days, she felt something that almost resembled safe. Morning came with pale light through the small windows. Mara woke confused, disoriented. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back: the river, the vows, the cabin. Daniel was already up, dressed in clean clothes, moving quietly around the kitchen area. He glanced over when she stirred. Morning. Coffee's ready. She sat up, pushed hair from her face. What time is it? Near 6. I need to head to town soon. The mention of town made her stomach clench. Do you have to? Need supplies. And I need to make sure folks understand you're under my protection now. He poured coffee into a cup, brought it to her. Drink this. There's breakfast too. Not much, but it'll hold you. She took the cup, wrapped her hands around its warmth. What if someone tries to stop you? Then I'll remind them that marriage is legal and binding. He sat at the table, pulled on his boots. Your father might make noise, but he's got no legal standing. We spoke vows. We had a witness we consummated. He stopped, shook his head. Well, we'll consummate eventually. That's close enough. What if he brings the law? The law's on our side. You're 20 years old enough to marry without permission. And what he was doing selling you, that's illegal in most territories now. Daniel stood, checked his gun belt. I'm hoping he's smart enough to let it go. My father's not smart. He's mean. Mean I can handle. Mara climbed out of bed, still wearing his oversized clothes. Can I come with you? No. The answer was immediate and firm. She felt her back stiffen. Why not? Because the whole town will be talking about yesterday. They'll stare, whisper, maybe worse. You don't need that yet. He walked to her, put his hands on her shoulders. Stay here. Rest. Eat. I'll be back before dark. I don't want to be alone. You'll be fine. Door locks from the inside. Guns on the mantel if you need it, though you won't. Nobody knows this place except folks in town, and they're too scared of me to cause trouble. Scared of you? I haven't been friendly the last 10 years. Folks learn to keep their distance. He dropped his hands, stepped back. That works in our favor now. She watched him gather supplies, saddlebags, a list written in careful script money from a tin on the shelf. He moved with purpose, efficiency. A man used to being alone, used to relying only on himself. Daniel, what if you don't come back? He stopped, looked at her. I'll come back. But what if something happens? Then you take the horse in the barn, you ride north until you hit the Pearson Ranch. Tell them you're my widow. They'll help you. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing weather. But nothing's going to happen. I'm just buying supplies and showing my face. I'll be back. He left before she could argue further. She watched from the window as he saddled his horse, mounted up, and rode down the mountain trail until the trees swallowed him. Then she was alone. The silence pressed against her ears. She'd never been truly alone before. Her father had always been there watching, controlling. Now there was nothing but birdsong and wind and her own breathing. She spent the morning exploring the cabin. It didn't take long, one room sparsely furnished. But she found small details that told her about the man she'd married. Books on a shelf, not many, but well-worn. History, philosophy. One book of poetry, with pages so thin they were nearly transparent. A journal on the bedside table, though she didn't open it. That felt like trespassing. In the kitchen, she found supplies organized with military precision. Everything labeled, everything in its place. Flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt, pork, coffee. Not abundance, but enough. He'd been living carefully, stretching resources. She made herself eat, even though her stomach still felt uncertain. Bread and cheese from yesterday. More coffee. She washed the dishes in water from the barrel, dried them, put them back exactly where she'd found them. By noon, the silence was driving her mad. She stepped outside, breathed mountain air, looked at the world Daniel had chosen. Trees everywhere, thick and tall. The creek babbling somewhere behind the cabin. Mountains rising in every direction, peaks still snow-capped despite the spring warmth. It was beautiful. It was isolated. It was terrifying. She walked to the barn, pushed open the door. Inside, she found one horse, the mare Daniel had mentioned. Supplies hanging on the walls. Tools she didn't recognize. Everything neat, organized, cared for. "He really has been alone," she whispered to the horse. 10 years up here by himself. The mare snorted, unimpressed with her observation. Mara spent the afternoon sitting outside on the cabin step, letting the sun warm her face. She tried to imagine what her life would become. Would she learn to love this place? Would she learn to love the man who'd claimed her? Or would she just learn to survive one day at a time? The sun was dropping toward the horizon when she heard hoofbeats. She stood, heart pounding, ready to run. Then Daniel appeared through the trees, saddlebags bulging, and relief flooded through her. He dismounted, studied her face. "You all right? I thought—" She stopped, hating how her voice shook. "I thought maybe you weren't coming back." "I said I would." He started unpacking the saddlebags. "Brought fabric, 3 kinds. You can choose what you want for dresses, and thread, needles, buttons. Woman at the store helped me figure out what you'd need." "Did anyone—" "Your father tried to make a scene. I shut him down." Daniel's tone was casual, but his jaw was tight. "Sheriff was there. Explained to him that our marriage is legal. Your father didn't like it, but there's nothing he can do." "What did he say?" "Doesn't matter. He won't bother you again." "Daniel, what did he say?" He stopped unpacking, met her eyes. "He called you names, said some things about what you'd be good for. I might have broken his nose." Mara's hand flew to her mouth. "You hit him again." "I warned him first. He didn't listen." Daniel shrugged. "Sheriff saw the whole thing. Said it was self-defense since your father threw the first punch, which was stupid of him, but your father's not known for smart decisions." She should have felt satisfied. Some part of her did, but mostly she just felt tired. "Come inside," Daniel said gently. "I'll show you what I got." They spent the evening going through supplies. Fabric in 3 colors, dark blue, brown, and a soft green that made her breath catch. Thread in multiple colors, needles of different sizes, buttons carved from bone. He'd even brought ribbons. "You didn't have to get all this," she said. "Yes, I did. Can't have my wife wearing my old shirts forever." He pulled out another package. "And I got this." He unwrapped a length of white cotton. Soft, fine, expensive. "For a nightgown," he explained. "Something that's yours." Tears pricked her eyes. "This must have cost—" "Don't worry about cost. Just make yourself what you need." She ran her fingers over the fabric. When was the last time she'd had something new? Something clean and whole, and hers. "Thank you," she whispered. They ate dinner in comfortable silence. Daniel had bought fresh vegetables, and he made a stew that filled the cabin with warmth and good smells. They sat by the fire after drinking coffee, not talking much, but not needing to. "I can teach you to sew," Mara finally said. "If you want." Daniel smiled. "I know how to sew. War taught me that. But I'm terrible at it. If you need help, ask. Otherwise, it's all yours." "I'll start tomorrow. Make myself something decent to wear." "Take your time. No rush." She looked at him across the firelight. This strange, quiet man who'd upended both their lives with one impulsive act of mercy. He was rough around the edges, scarred by war and isolation. But he'd kept his word. He'd protected her. And for the first time since her mother died 5 years ago, Mara felt like maybe she might be able to build something resembling a life. "Daniel," she said softly. "Yeah. I think we might be all right." He met her gaze, and something like hope flickered in his eyes. "Yeah," he said. "I think we might." 3 weeks passed like water over stones, slowly reshaping everything they touched. Mara's hands learned the rhythm of needle and thread, creating dresses from the fabric Daniel had brought. The blue one came first, simple but sturdy. Then the brown with buttons up the front. She saved the green fabric, not quite ready to cut into something so beautiful. Daniel worked the land during the day, repairing fences, clearing brush, preparing for summer. They fell into routines without discussing them. She cooked breakfast while he fed the animals. They ate together at the small table, speaking little but comfortable in the quiet. He worked outside until the sun dropped low, then came in smelling like pine and sweat and mountain air. Evenings they sat by the fire. Sometimes Daniel read aloud from his books while Mara sewed. His voice was rough but steady, stumbling over complicated words, patient with passages he had to read twice to understand. Other nights they just sat listening to the fire pop and the wind move through the trees outside. They were learning each other, slow, careful, like two wild animals circling, trying to decide if they were safe together. Mara learned that Daniel woke before dawn every morning, that he drank his coffee black and scalding hot, that he had nightmares sometimes that made him cry out in his sleep. She learned he was left-handed, that he sang under his breath while he worked, that he had a scar across his ribs from a Confederate bayonet that still ached when storms rolled in. Daniel learned that Mara was terrified of thunder, that she'd never learned to read more than simple words, that she flinched whenever he moved too quickly. He learned she had a sharp sense of humor buried under years of fear, that she could cook with almost nothing, and make it taste good, that she cried silently so he wouldn't hear. They were becoming something. Not quite friends, not quite strangers. Something in between, fragile as new ice. On the 23rd day, everything changed. Mara was hanging laundry behind the cabin when she heard horses. Multiple horses moving fast. Her hands froze on the wet shirt she'd been pinning to the line. Daniel was in the barn. She ran to him breathless. "Someone's coming." He dropped the tool he'd been holding, moved to the barn door. His hand went automatically to his gun belt. Through the trees they saw 4 riders approaching. Her father led them, his face still swollen and bruised from where Daniel had broken his nose. Behind him rode 3 men Mara recognized from town rough types who drank too much and caused trouble. "Get in the house," Daniel said quietly. "Lock the door. Don't come out unless I call for you." Daniel. "Now, Mara." The command in his voice made her move. She ran to the cabin, slammed the door, turned the lock with shaking hands. Then she pressed her face to the window, watching. Daniel walked out to meet them. He stood in the center of the clearing, feet planted, hands loose at his sides. Ready. The riders pulled up 20 feet away. Her father dismounted, and the other 3 followed. They spread out slightly, forming a half circle. The tactic was obvious. Even to Mara, they meant to surround him if they could. "Crowe." Her father spat the name like poison. "Mayfield." Daniel's voice was calm. "You're on my land without permission. Turn around and ride back." "I'm taking my daughter back." She's not your daughter anymore. She's my wife. That wasn't a legal marriage. No license, no proper ceremony. Had vows, had witnesses. That's legal enough. Daniel shifted his weight slightly. You want to dispute it, take it to a judge, but you're not taking her. One of the other men laughed. 4 against 1, old man. You sure you want to die over this? I'm 40, not old, and yeah, I'm sure. Daniel's hand drifted closer to his gun. Question is, are you sure you want to die trying? Her father pulled a piece of paper from his coat. This here's a contract, signed before witnesses. Says I sold her to Tom Hewitt for 60 silver. That transaction preceded your so-called marriage, which means she was already promised to another man when you stole her. Mara's stomach dropped. Tom Hewitt, the blacksmith's son, who'd wanted to check her teeth. She'd forgotten about him, forgotten there might be legal complications beyond her father's rage. Daniel didn't even glance at the paper. That contract is void. You can't sell a human being. I can sell my daughter's hand in marriage. That's legal. Not without her consent. She's under my authority. She was. Not anymore. Daniel took a step forward. And you forfeited your authority when you stripped her naked by the river. Any judge would see it that way. Tom paid good money. Then Tom can take it up with you. That's between you and him. Has nothing to do with me or Mara. Tom Hewitt himself stepped forward. He was younger than Daniel by 15 years, bigger by 50 pounds. Muscle from the forge work arms thick as fence posts. I paid for her. She's mine. No. Daniel's voice dropped low, dangerous. She's not. You think you can take all 4 of us? I think I can kill at least 2 before you bring me down. Question is, which 2? Daniel looked at each man in turn. You feeling lucky? How about you? Which one of you wants to be first? The men shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the easy intimidation they'd expected. Mara watched from the window, heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her father sneered. All talk. You won't draw on us. You're too civilized. I spent 3 years killing men in Virginia. 20 years hasn't made me civilized, just tired. Daniel's hand hovered over his gun. But I'll wake up for this. Gladly. Tom Hewitt cracked his knuckles. Maybe we don't need guns. Maybe I just beat you until you see reason, then take what's mine. Try it. Tom rushed forward with a roar. Daniel sidestepped fast for a man his size and drove his elbow into Tom's kidney as the bigger man passed. Tom stumbled, crashed into the dirt. He came up swinging. The fight was brutal and quick. Tom had youth and size, but Daniel had experience and rage. They traded blows, fists connecting with flesh, grunts of pain, the sound of bodies hitting ground. Tom landed a punch that split Daniel's lip. Daniel responded with 3 rapid hits to Tom's ribs that made the younger man gasp. The other 3 men moved to join in. That's when Daniel pulled his gun. Next man who moves, I shoot. He didn't aim at anyone specifically. Didn't need to. The threat was clear. This is between me and Tom. You want to turn it into a gunfight, I'm happy to oblige. But some of you will die. Maybe all of you. The men froze. Her father's face went purple with rage, but he stayed put. Even drunk and mean, he knew when a man meant business. Tom circled, breathing hard. Blood ran from his nose. Put the gun away. Fight me proper. I am fighting you proper. Guns just to keep your friends honest. Daniel wiped blood from his mouth with his free hand. You want to keep going, fine. But you're not taking her. Tom charged again. This time Daniel was ready. He holstered his gun in one smooth motion, ducked under Tom's swing, and drove his fist into the man's solar plexus. Tom's breath left in a whoosh. Before he could recover, Daniel grabbed his arm, twisted, and sent him face first into the dirt. Stay down, Daniel warned. Tom struggled to his knees, then to his feet. Stubborn, stupid. He came at Daniel one more time. Daniel broke his jaw with a single punch. The crack echoed across the clearing. Tom dropped like a stone and didn't get up. Silence fell. The only sound was Daniel's ragged breathing and Tom's moaning on the ground. "Anyone else?" Daniel asked. Blood dripped from his split lip. His knuckles were raw, but his eyes were clear and hard. "Anyone else want to dispute my marriage?" Her father stared at Tom's prone form. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Daniel spat blood into the dirt. "You come back here again, I'll kill you. Not beat you. Kill you. You understand? You're threatening murder in front of witnesses. I'm promising self-defense on my own land. Big difference." Daniel walked toward them slowly, deliberately. "Now get off my property. Take your contract, take your friend, and go. If I see any of you again, it'll be the last thing you see." The men grabbed Tom, who was barely conscious, and dragged him toward the horses. Her father stood his ground a moment longer, staring at Daniel with pure hatred. "She'll never really be yours," he said. "I made sure of that. 19 years I broke her spirit piece by piece. You can marry her, but she'll always be mine. Always." Daniel moved faster than thought. His hand closed around her father's throat, lifting the older man onto his toes. "Listen close." Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're right that she's got scars. You're right that she's been hurt. But she's healing. Day by day I watch her heal. And every day she gets stronger is another day further from you." He tightened his grip. "So no, she's not yours. Not her body, not her mind, not her spirit. None of it belongs to you anymore." He released her father, who stumbled backward, gasping. The four men mounted their horses, Tom barely able to stay in the saddle. They rode away fast, not looking back. Daniel stood in the clearing until the sound of hoofbeats faded completely. Then his legs buckled, and he sat down hard in the dirt. Mara burst from the cabin and ran to him. His face was a mess, split lip bruising, already starting around his eye blood from a cut over his eyebrow. "You're hurt," she said. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "Mara, I'm fine." He looked up at her, and she saw something fierce and protective in his eyes. "Did you hear what he said? The last thing. About me being broken." "No, before that. About the contract." Daniel struggled to his feet, wincing. "He admitted he sold you, in front of 3 witnesses. That's illegal in this territory. If he pushes this, if he tries to make legal trouble, we can have him arrested." She hadn't thought of that. "Will he push it?" "I don't know. He's mean and stupid, bad combination." Daniel touched his swelling eye gently. "But he's also a coward. Now that he knows I'll fight might be enough to keep him away." They walked back to the cabin together. Inside, Mara made him sit while she fetched water and cloth. She cleaned his wounds carefully, her hands steady despite the fear still coursing through her. "You could have died," she said quietly. "Could have. Didn't. 4 against 1. 3.5. Tom was the only real threat. The others were just there to look tough." He winced as she pressed the cloth to his eyebrow. "I've faced worse odds." "In the war?" "Yeah, in the war." His voice went distant. "This was nothing compared to that." She cleaned the last of the blood away, studied the damage. He'd heal nothing broken, except maybe a rib or two, and those would mend. "He was right, though," she said, "about me being broken." Daniel's hand shot out, gripped her wrist. Not hard, but firm. Don't let his poison work on you. That's what he wants, for you to believe you're ruined, so you'll come crawling back." "But I am ruined. You know what he did to me. How he—" Her voice cracked. "I'm not whole anymore, Daniel. I don't know if I can ever be whole. None of us are whole. We're all broken by something." He pulled her closer, made her look at him. "I got pieces missing from the war. You got pieces missing from him. But broken doesn't mean useless. Doesn't mean we can't build something good with what's left." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of everything. Of him coming back. Of you getting hurt because of me. Of—" She struggled to find words. Of trying to be a wife when I don't know how." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood moved to the shelf where he kept his books. He pulled down the one with thin pages, the poetry book. Opened it carefully to a marked page. "My brother gave me this, before he died. Said there was a poem in here that explained everything about living." He held it out to her. "Can you read it?" Mara looked at the page. The words were too complicated, the letters too close together. She shook her head. "That's all right, I'll read it." He cleared his throat, and his rough voice softened as he spoke the words. "The wound is the place where the light enters you." She frowned. "I don't understand." "Me neither. Not fully. But I think it means—" He closed the book carefully. "I think it means we're not broken despite our wounds. We're alive because of them. The hard things we survive, they crack us open. Let light in. Let change happen." That sounds like something a person who hasn't been hurt would say. The man who wrote it lost his son, lost his home, spent years wandering before he found peace. Daniel set the book down. He knew about wounds. Mara wiped her eyes. "So what do we do now?" "Now we heal, both of us, together." "What if my father comes back?" "Then I'll handle it again, many times as it takes." He touched her face gently, his calloused thumb brushing away tears. "You're my wife, Mara. That means something to me, means I protect you, no matter what." She leaned into his touch, letting herself feel the warmth of his hand, the solid reality of him. He'd fought 4 men for her, bled for her, would have died for her. The weight of that was almost too much to bear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me. This is what marriage is supposed to be, standing between each other and the world." They stood like that for a moment, his hand on her face, her eyes closed. Then Mara did something she'd never planned, never expected. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was brief, chaste, tentative, but it was hers to give, her choice. Her first kiss that wasn't stolen or forced. When she pulled back, Daniel's eyes were wide with surprise. "What was that for?" "For fighting. For protecting me. For—" She searched for words. "For making me believe I might not be broken forever." Something shifted in his expression. Something warm and careful, and maybe the beginning of love. "You're not broken," he said firmly. "You're healing. There's a difference." That night, Daniel slept on the floor as usual, but something between them had changed. They'd crossed some invisible line, moved from strangers bound by vows to 2 people actually choosing each other. It was small, fragile as bird bones, but it was real. Mara lay in the darkness, listening to him breathe, thinking about the fight, about her father's hatred, about the poem Daniel had read. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Maybe it was true. Maybe all the terrible things that had happened to her had cracked her open enough to let Daniel in, let hope in, let the possibility of healing begin. She thought about the kiss, how his lips had felt against hers, warm, surprised, gentle, how her heart had stuttered in her chest, how for one brief moment she'd felt something other than fear, something that might have been desire, or at least the memory of what desire could feel like. "Daniel?" she whispered into the darkness. "Yeah." His voice was alert, still awake. "I'm glad you stepped forward that day." A pause. Then, "Me too." "Do you think—" She stopped, gathered courage. "Do you think someday we might have a real marriage? Not just sleeping in separate places and being careful around each other?" The silence stretched so long, she thought he might have fallen asleep. Then he spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "I think if we're patient with each other, if we keep choosing each other every day, we might have something better than most folks get. Real or not, I don't know. But it'll be ours." "I'd like that." "So would I." Mara closed her eyes, pulled the quilt up to her chin. Outside, the wind moved through the pines, making them sigh. The creek babbled its endless song. An owl called somewhere in the darkness hunting. And in the cabin, two wounded people lay in the darkness, not touching, but not alone. Learning how to be married, learning how to heal, learning how to let light into the places where they'd been broken. 3 days later, Daniel rode to town again. This time, Mara went with him. She wore her new blue dress, her hair braided, and pinned Daniel's old coat over her shoulders against the morning chill. "You sure about this?" Daniel asked as they rode. "No, but hiding won't make it easier." They rode in silence down the mountain trail. As they approached town, Mara felt her heart start to race. The last time she'd been here, she'd been naked and terrified by the river. Now she was clothed and protected, but the memories were sharp as broken glass. Daniel seemed to sense her fear. He reached back and squeezed her hand where it rested on his waist. "You're not alone this time." "I know." They tied the horse outside the general store. People on the street stopped and stared. Whispers followed them like shadows. Daniel ignored it, all held out his hand to help Mara down. "We need supplies," he said clearly, loud enough for the watchers to hear. "Then we're leaving. Anyone got a problem with that?" No one spoke. They went into the store together. Mrs. Henderson, the shopkeeper's wife, stood behind the counter. She'd been in the crowd by the river. Her face flushed when she saw Mara. "We need flour, sugar, salt," Daniel said. "And fabric. My wife wants to make more dresses." The emphasis on "my wife" was deliberate. Mrs. Henderson nodded gathered items with shaking hands. She couldn't meet Mara's eyes. "I'm sorry," the older woman finally whispered. "For what happened. For not stopping it." Mara didn't know what to say. The anger she expected to feel wasn't there. Just exhaustion and a strange kind of pity. "It's done," she said quietly. "It's over." They paid and left. On the street, Amos Pike stood with his Bible watching. He approached carefully, hands raised in peace. "Mrs. Crowe," he said, "might I have a word?" Daniel stepped between them. "Say it where I can hear." "Of course." Amos cleared his throat. "I wanted to apologize for the manner of your marriage, for not insisting on proper ceremony, for—" he gestured vaguely. "For all of it." "We're legally married?" Mara asked. "Yes, I've recorded it in the church register. Daniel Crowe and Mara Mayfield joined in matrimony on April 13, 1872. He looked at Daniel. "If you'd like a proper ceremony later, a blessing in the church." "We're good," Daniel said. "But thanks." They turned to leave. Then Mara stopped, turned back to Amos. "Have you seen my father?" The old preacher's expression darkened. "He left town 2 days ago. Said he was heading to Denver to find a lawyer. I don't think he'll find one willing to take his case, but—" He shrugged. "Be careful. Wounded pride makes men dangerous." "We will be." They rode home in silence, supplies packed in saddlebags. As they climbed into the mountains, leaving the town behind, Mara felt something loosen in her chest. She'd faced the place of her shame and survived it. She'd worn a dress instead of being naked. She'd stood beside her husband instead of being sold. It was a small victory, but it was hers. When they reached the cabin, Daniel helped her down from the horse. This time his hands lingered on her waist, and she didn't pull away. "You did good today," he said. "I was terrified." Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. She looked up at him, this weathered, complicated man who'd become her husband. The bruises from the fight were fading to yellow-green. His split lip had healed. But there were older scars too, ones she was just beginning to see. The war had marked him. Loneliness had marked him, and now she was marking him too. With hope, maybe. With the possibility of something better. "Daniel," she said softly, "will you teach me to read? Really read, not just simple words?" Surprise flickered across his face. Yeah, yeah, I can do that. I want to understand that poem. The one about wounds and light. We'll start tonight. He smiled, and it transformed his face. Might take a while. I'm not much of a teacher. That's all right. We've got time. They did have time. Days and weeks and years stretching ahead of them. Time to heal. Time to learn. Time to build something real from the ruins of their separate tragedies. It wouldn't be easy. There would be nightmares and arguments and moments when the past tried to drag them both under. But they would face it together. Two broken people learning to be whole. Two strangers learning to be family. Two survivors learning that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. A river, a stranger, a vow spoken in anger that becomes something like love. The reading lessons began that evening and continued every night after. Daniel sat beside Mara at the table, the poetry book open between them, his finger tracing words while she struggled to sound them out. Her progress was slow. Years of neglect couldn't be undone in weeks, but she was determined. The wound, she read haltingly, is the place where the... She stopped frustrated. I can't read that word. Light. Light. It doesn't look like it sounds. English is stupid that way. Daniel smiled. Try again. The wound is the place where the light enters you. She looked up at him. I read the whole thing. You did. Pride warmed his voice. Want to try the next line? They worked until the fire burned low, and Mara's eyes ached from squinting at small letters in dim light. When she finally closed the book, Daniel stood and stretched his back, cracking. You're getting better. Another month and you'll be reading on your own. Another year, maybe. We've got years. He said it simply, like it was a fact as solid as the mountains around them. Mara moved to the bed, suddenly exhausted. Daniel gathered his blankets for the floor as he did every night. But tonight, something made her speak. You don't have to sleep down there. He froze, blankets in hand. What? The bed is big enough for two, and you're hurting your back on the hard floor. I can hear you groaning in the morning. Mara, I don't think... I'm not saying... Her face flushed. I'm not ready for everything. But we're married. We can share a bed without that. Can't we? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Are you sure? No. But I'm tired of being afraid all the time. Tired of treating you like you're going to hurt me when you've done nothing but protect me. If you change your mind. I'll tell you. I promise. He set the blankets aside, removed his boots, and climbed into the bed on the far edge. The mattress shifted under his weight. Mara lay rigid on her side, facing the wall, hyper-aware of his presence behind her. She could hear his breathing, feel the warmth of his body, even though they weren't touching. Good night, Mara, he said quietly. Good night. She didn't sleep for hours. Her mind raced, her body tense, every old fear screaming at her that this was dangerous, that men couldn't be trusted, that sharing a bed meant surrendering control. But Daniel just lay there, breathing steadily, not moving, not reaching for her, not demanding anything. Eventually, exhaustion won. She fell into restless sleep, and when nightmares came, as they always did, she woke gasping, disoriented in the darkness. You're all right. Daniel's voice came from beside her. Just a dream. You're safe. His hand found hers in the darkness. Squeezed once. Then let go. The brief contact was enough. She steadied her breathing, focused on the sound of the creek outside, and drifted back to sleep. The next morning, she woke to find Daniel already up making coffee. He didn't mention the nightmare, didn't ask questions, just handed her a cup and started making breakfast like it was any other day. Summer settled over the mountains like a warm blanket. The days grew long and hot, the nights brief and cool. Daniel worked on expanding the garden, building a better fence, repairing the barn roof. Mara learned to manage the household, cooking, cleaning, mending, tending the small vegetable garden that was starting to produce. They fell into rhythms that felt almost like a real marriage. waking together, eating together, working side by side. At night, they shared the bed, always careful to maintain space between them, but the space grew smaller week by week. Sometimes Mara woke to find Daniel's arm across her waist, or her head on his shoulder. Neither of them mentioned it. 6 weeks after the fight, a rider came up the mountain trail. Mara saw him first, a man on a gray horse riding slow and purposeful. Fear spiked through her. Daniel! He came running from the barn, saw the rider, and his hand went to his gun. But as the man drew closer, Daniel relaxed slightly. "That's Sheriff Morrison. Must be official business." The sheriff pulled up in front of the cabin. He was older than Daniel, gray-haired, and weathered with eyes that had seen too much. He tipped his hat to Mara. "Mrs. Crowe." The title still startled her. "Sheriff, I need to speak with your husband, official-like." Daniel stepped forward. "What's this about?" "Your father-in-law filed a complaint. Says you assaulted him, broke Tom Hewitt's jaw, and stole his daughter through coercion." The sheriff's tone was neutral, professional. "I need to hear your side." "We getting married wasn't coercion, it was rescue." "That's your version. He's got a different story. Says you threatened him, forced the marriage, and beat him when he tried to reclaim his property." "His property?" Daniel's voice went hard. "She's not property." "I know that. You know that. But the law's complicated." The sheriff dismounted, stretched his back. "Mind if we sit? This is going to take a while." They moved to the cabin. Mara made coffee while Daniel and the sheriff sat at the table. She stayed close, listening, her hands shaking as she poured. "Tell me what happened," the sheriff said. "From the beginning, from the And Daniel told the story, the river, the crowd, Mara being sold, his intervention. He spoke plainly, leaving nothing out. When he finished, the sheriff turned to Mara. "That match his memory, ma'am?" "Yes." Her voice came out stronger than she expected. Every word. "Your father says you were a willing participant in the sale. Says you wanted to marry Tom Hewitt." Rage flashed through her, hot and sudden. "That's a lie. I begged him not to. He tied me to a bedpost so I couldn't run away." "You got proof of that?" She held out her wrists. The rope burns had faded to pale scars, but they were still visible. The sheriff examined them, his expression darkening. "Those could be from anything. They're from 3 days of being tied up while my father planned to sell me like livestock." Mara's voice shook with anger, now not fear. "Ask anyone in town. Ask Mrs. Henderson, ask Amos Pike. They saw what happened." "I've talked to witnesses. Stories vary." The sheriff pulled out a paper. "Your father's got 3 men who will testify you appeared willing. That you smiled at Tom Hewitt, that you... Those are lies." Daniel stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Those men are the same ones who came here looking for a fight. They'll say whatever he pays them to say." "Maybe so, but it's their word against yours." The sheriff looked genuinely troubled. "Look, between you and me, I think your father-in-law is scum. What he did was wrong 7 ways from Sunday, but legally, it's murky. A father's got rights over his daughter until she marries, and if the marriage itself is in question..." "The marriage isn't in question," Mara interrupted. "I chose Daniel. I spoke vows. Amos Pike witnessed it." "Under duress, your father claims." "Under rescue." She moved to stand beside Daniel. "My father stripped me naked and dragged me to that river. He took bids on me like I was cattle." Daniel stopped it. "He offered me a choice, go with him or stay with my father. I chose Daniel. That's not duress, that's salvation." The sheriff was quiet for a long moment, studying them both. "You love him." The question caught her off guard. Did she love Daniel? She wasn't sure she knew what love was supposed to feel like, but she knew she felt safe with him. Knew she wanted to be here in this cabin, learning to read and sharing a bed and building something new. "I'm learning to," she said honestly, "and that's more than I ever hoped for." The sheriff nodded slowly. "Your father wants you to come back. Says if you do, he'll drop all charges against Daniel." "No." The word came out flat and final. I'm not going back. Ever. Even if it means Daniel goes to jail. Daniel's hand found hers, squeezed. She doesn't have to choose that. I'll face whatever comes. Damned if I'll let you. Mara turned to the sheriff. What do you need? What proof will make this go away? Honestly, time. If you two stay married, build a life, have children, eventually the question of legitimacy becomes moot. Can't annul a marriage that's been consummated and produced offspring. Mara felt her face heat. We're not. I don't need details, ma'am. I'm just telling you how the law works. The sheriff stood, put his hat back on. Here's what I'll do. I'll tell your father that I investigated and found no grounds for charges, that your marriage appears legitimate, that you're staying of your own free will, and that if he continues to pursue this, I'll have to investigate the legality of him selling you in the first place. Will that work? Daniel asked. Maybe, maybe not. Your father-in-law is stubborn and mean, but he's also smart enough to know that if this goes to a judge, his actions will be scrutinized too. Might be enough to make him back down. And if it's not, then we'll deal with it when it comes. The sheriff moved toward the door. Meanwhile, stay out of town if you can. Don't give him any ammunition. Live quiet, live clean, and hope he finds something else to be angry about. After the sheriff left, Mara and Daniel stood in the clearing, watching dust settle where the horse had gone. This isn't over, Mara said. No, probably not. I'm sorry. You'd have been better off leaving me at that river. Daniel turned to her, his expression fierce. Don't ever say that. Marrying you is the first good thing I've done in 20 years. I'm not sorry, and I won't be sorry even if your father makes life hell. But if you go to jail, I won't. The law's on our side even if it doesn't feel like it. He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her. We're going to be fine. You hear me? We're going to be fine. She pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the smell of him, sweat and pine and something uniquely Daniel. His heart beat steady under her ear. Strong, reliable, safe. I don't want to lose this, she whispered. Lose you. You won't. They stood like that until the sun dropped behind the peaks and the evening chill crept in. Then they went inside together, made dinner together, sat by the fire together. Daniel read to her from a new book stories about knights and quests and honor. His voice rumbled through her, soothing and familiar. That night in bed, Mara rolled over to face him instead of the wall. Daniel's eyes were open, reflecting firelight from the hearth. Can I ask you something? She said softly. Anything. Do you wish you'd married different? Someone whole, someone without all this? She gestured vaguely. All this trouble? No. You didn't even think about it. Don't need to. You're who I married. You're who I want to be married to. His hand came up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Do you wish you'd had a choice? Real courtship, proper proposal, all that? She considered this honestly. Sometimes. But mostly, I'm just grateful you stepped forward at all. So we're both grateful for a mess. He smiled slightly. Seems about right for us. Daniel, I want... She stopped, unsure how to say it. I want to be a real wife. Eventually. When I'm ready. I want you to know that I'm trying. His thumb brushed her cheek, gentle as breath. I know. And I can wait. However long it takes. What if it takes years? Then it takes years. Most men wouldn't. I'm not most men. And this isn't most marriages. His eyes held hers in the dimness. We built this backwards, started with vows, and worked backward toward courting. It's strange, but it's ours. And I wouldn't change it. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. How did I get this lucky? Luck had nothing to do with it. 40 years of loneliness did. 20 years of nightmares did. Your father's cruelty did. He pulled her closer until her forehead rested against his. All the worst things in our lives led us to that river. And yeah, what happened there was awful. But what came after? His voice roughened. what came after might be worth it. She kissed him then, longer than the first time, deeper with less fear and more intention. His hand cupped the back of her head, holding her gently, letting her control the pace. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Was that all right?" she asked. "More than all right." "I'm still not ready for everything." "I know. That's fine." She settled against his chest, his arms around her, and for the first time since she could remember, she felt something like peace. Outside, the night sounds of the mountains played their familiar symphony. Inside, two damaged people held each other and learned what it meant to be married, to be safe, to be loved. 3 weeks later, Daniel came back from checking the north fence line with blood on his hands. Not his own. A deer had gotten tangled in wire, broken its leg trying to escape. He'd had to put it down. "Help me dress it," he said. "Meat will keep us through part of winter." They worked together in the fading light, Daniel's knife quick and sure, Mara holding and lifting as instructed. It was gruesome work, but necessary. When they finished, Daniel washed his hands in the creek while Mara hung the meat in the smokehouse. "You did good," he said when she emerged. Most women couldn't handle that. Most women weren't raised by a drunk who made them clean his hunting kills from age 10. She wiped her hands on her apron. "I'm not squeamish about much." "I've noticed." He studied her in the twilight. "You're different than you were 2 months ago." "Different how?" "Stronger, less afraid, more—" He searched for the word. "More yourself, maybe." She considered this. He was right. The constant terror that had defined her life with her father had faded to background noise. She still had nightmares, still flinched sometimes, still carried the weight of those 19 years. But she was learning to carry it differently. Learning she could survive it, that it didn't have to define her. "I had a good teacher," she said. "I didn't teach you anything. You taught me what safety feels like. That's everything." They walked back to the cabin together, shoulders brushing. Inside, Mara cooked while Daniel cleaned his knife and tools. They developed an easy companionship, comfortable silences, punctuated by small conversations. It wasn't the passionate romance she'd read about in the books Daniel owned, but it was solid, real, built on trust and choice and daily acts of kindness. After dinner, Daniel spread papers on the table, plans he'd been drawing for expanding the cabin. "Winter's coming. We need more space. I'm thinking another room here, maybe a proper root cellar." He traced lines with his finger. "If we're going to make this work long term, we need to build proper." "How long term are we talking?" He looked up at her. "Rest of our lives, I hope, unless you're planning to leave." No, I'm not planning that." She studied the drawings. "Will you teach me to help with the building?" "You want to learn carpentry?" "I want to learn everything. Reading, building, how to shoot, how to survive if—" She stopped, but he understood. "If something happens to me." "Yes." "Nothing's going to happen to me." "You don't know that. My father could come back. There could be an accident. You could—" Her voice broke. "I can't be helpless again. I won't be." Daniel set down his pencil, came around the table, pulled her into his arms. "All right, I'll teach you. Everything I know. How to shoot, how to hunt, how to survive winter alone if you have to. But know this, I'm not planning on leaving you. Not by choice, not by chance, if I can help it." She clung to him, breathing in his strength. "Promise me." "I promise I'll do everything I can to stay alive. To stay with you. That's all any of us can promise." It had to be enough. She made herself believe it was enough. The next morning they started with the gun. Daniel set up targets behind the barn, old bottles on a fence post, and showed her how to load, aim, fire. The recoil shocked her the first time, sent her stumbling backward. Daniel steadied her, adjusted her grip, made her try again. "Don't close your eyes when you pull the trigger. Keep them open. Focus on the target." She fired again. Missed. Tried again. Missed. On the fifth shot, a bottle exploded into fragments. Pride surged through her. Good, Daniel said. Again. They practiced until her arms ached and her ears rang. By the end, she could hit 3 out of 5 bottles. Not great, but better than nothing. You're a natural, Daniel said as they walked back to the cabin. I'm terrible. You're learning. That's what matters. He reloaded the gun, handed it to her. From now on, you wear this when I'm not here. Someone comes up that trail, you don't recognize them, you shoot first and ask questions after. The weight of the gun on her hip felt strange, but empowering. She'd gone from being sold naked by a river to being armed and learning to protect herself. The transformation felt impossible, like it had happened to someone else. That afternoon, a storm rolled in fast and violent. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning split the sky. Mara froze at the table where she'd been kneading bread, her hands going white-knuckled on the dough. Terror locked her joints, her breath coming in short gasps. Daniel was beside her instantly. You're all right. Just thunder. You're safe. But she wasn't all right. She was 7 years old again, hiding under the bed while her father raged drunk through the house during a storm. She was 12, trapped outside in lightning, while he'd locked her out as punishment. She was every age she'd ever been, every moment of fear compressed into this single thunderclap. Mara, look at me. Daniel's hands cupped her face, forcing her eyes to his. You're not there. You're here. With me. In our cabin. Safe. I can't the thunder. I know. But it can't hurt you. It's just noise. He pulled her against him, his arms tight and secure. Feel my heartbeat. Count it. 1, 2, 3. She pressed her ear to his chest, forced herself to count the steady rhythm. The storm raged outside, but inside she had this, his warmth, his strength, his absolute certainty that she was safe. That's it, he murmured against her hair. Just breathe, just count. You're doing fine. They stood like that, through the worst of the storm. Daniel holding her, whispering reassurances, never once making her feel weak or foolish for her fear. When the thunder finally moved on, leaving just rain pattering on the roof, Mara pulled back and wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. For what? Being afraid, that's human. You're not afraid of storms. I'm afraid of plenty of things. Just different things than you. He guided her back to the table, helped her finish the bread. We've all got scars that ache when the weather changes. Yours are just from thunder. What are yours from? He was quiet for a moment. Gunfire. Can't hear shots without being back in Virginia, watching boys die. It's been 20 years, and I still drop to the ground sometimes when someone fires a gun unexpected. She thought about the target practice that morning. How he'd stood behind her steady and calm while she fired shot after shot. How much that must have cost him. You didn't tell me. We could have done something else. No, you needed to learn. My fears don't get to make you helpless. He squeezed her shoulder. That's what we do. We carry our scars, and we keep moving forward anyway. That night, Mara finished the green dress, the one she'd been saving. She'd made it carefully with tiny stitches and attention to detail. When she put it on, Daniel's eyes went wide. Mara, you look... He stopped, seeming at a loss for words. You look beautiful. She felt heat climb her cheeks. It's just a dress. It's not just anything. You made that, with your own hands. He stood, walked around her, taking in the fit, the color, the care she'd put into every seam. You're talented. It's basic sewing. It's art. He touched the fabric gently. And it matches your eyes, green like the pines in summer. No one had ever called her beautiful before. No one had ever looked at her the way Daniel was looking at her now, with appreciation and respect, and something warmer. Something that made her heart race in a way that wasn't fear. Dance with me, he said suddenly. What? Dance. I know we don't have music, but... He held out his hand. I want to dance with my wife in her beautiful new dress." She took his hand, let him pull her close. They swayed together in the firelight. No rhythm, but their own heartbeats. No music, but the rain on the roof and the crackle of burning wood. Daniel hummed something low and tuneless, and Mara rested her head against his shoulder. This was what marriage could be. Should be. Two people choosing each other, protecting each other, dancing in firelight for no reason except that they wanted to. It wasn't the marriage she'd expected, but it was better. It was real. "Thank you," she whispered. "For dancing. For everything. For fighting for me. For teaching me, for being patient while I figure out how to be a wife." She pulled back to look at him. "For making me believe I deserve this." Daniel's expression was tender and fierce all at once. "You deserve so much more than this. More than a cabin in the mountains with a broken man who doesn't know how to be gentle. You are gentle. In all the ways that matter." He kissed her, then slow and deep, his hands careful on her waist. Mara kissed him back, letting herself feel the want building between them, the possibility of something more. Not tonight, she still wasn't ready, but someday. Someday soon. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "Thought you should know." Mara's heart stuttered. "You are?" "Yeah. Don't know when it started. Maybe at the river. Maybe that first night when you trusted me enough to sleep under my roof. Maybe this morning when you blew that bottle apart and grinned like you'd conquered the world." He cupped her face. "But I'm falling, Mara. And I wanted you to know before it was too late to stop it." She felt tears slip down her cheeks. Happy tears this time. "I don't think I want you to stop." "No. No. Because I think—" She took a shaking breath. "I think I'm falling too." They stood in the firelight, holding each other, letting the truth settle around them. It wasn't perfect, wasn't. They were both still healing, still learning, still carrying wounds that might never fully close. But they were falling in love anyway, building something good from the wreckage of their pasts, proving that even the worst beginnings could lead to something worth fighting for. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the mountains clean. Inside, two people danced and held each other and let themselves believe that maybe finally they'd found home. Autumn came to the mountains with fire in the leaves and frost in the mornings. Mara woke one day to find Daniel already dressed, standing at the window with tension in his shoulders. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Snow on the peaks. Winter's coming early this year." He turned to face her. "We need to finish the addition before the ground freezes, and we need more supplies from town. I'll go with you." "Mara." "I'm going. We can't keep hiding up here forever." She climbed out of bed, reached for her green dress. "Besides, I want to see if Mrs. Henderson got that fabric I ordered. The wool for winter coats." Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but we stay together. Don't leave my sight." They rode down the mountain 2 hours later, the air sharp and clean. Mara had gotten better at riding, no longer clinging to Daniel in fear, but sitting confident behind him, watching the trail, the trees, the changing world around them. Town was busier than last time. Harvest season brought farmers in from outlying areas, wagons loaded with produce and grain. People stared as they rode past, but Mara kept her chin up, her hand resting on the gun at her hip that Daniel insisted she wear. At the general store, Mrs. Henderson greeted them with a genuine smile. "Mrs. Crowe, your fabric came in, and I got extra buttons like you asked." They were discussing thread colors when the door banged open. Tom Hewitt stood there, his jaw healed but crooked now, his eyes full of rage and whiskey. "You!" he snarled at Daniel. Daniel stepped in front of Mara. "Tom, you're drunk. Go home." "You broke my jaw. Cost me 3 weeks of work. I can't forge proper anymore, my whole face is wrong. You came at me. I defended myself. You stole what was mine." Tom's hand went to his belt, and Mara saw the knife there. I paid good money for her. She's not merchandise. Daniel's voice dropped low, dangerous. And you need to leave. Now. Make me. The store went silent. Mrs. Henderson backed toward the storeroom. 2 other customers froze by the fabric table. Mara's heart hammered, but she didn't run. Instead, she stepped out from behind Daniel. Tom, listen to me, she said clearly. I was never yours. That contract was illegal. My father had no right to sell me, and you had no right to buy me. What happened was wrong, and I'm sorry you were part of it. But I'm married to Daniel now, legally, properly, and nothing you do will change that. You think you're better than me? Tom's words slurred together. Prancing around in your nice dress, acting like a lady, you're trash. Your father said so himself. My father's a liar. He's right about you. Tom lurched forward. You're nothing but... Daniel's fist caught him in the stomach. Tom doubled over, gasping. Daniel grabbed his shirt, hauled him upright. You talk to my wife with respect, or you don't talk to her at all. Understand? Tom spat in his face. The fight was brutal and fast. Tom pulled his knife, slashed wild. Daniel dodged, grabbed Tom's wrist, twisted until bones cracked, and the knife clattered to the floor. Tom howled, swung with his other hand, connected with Daniel's cheek. Daniel barely flinched, drove his fist into Tom's ribs once, twice, 3 times. Stop! Sheriff Morrison burst through the door, gun drawn. Both of you stop. Daniel stepped back immediately, hands raised. Tom collapsed against the counter, clutching his broken wrist, blood running from his nose. He attacked first, Mrs. Henderson called out. Tom came in drunk and threatening. Daniel was defending his wife. The sheriff looked at Mara. That true? Every word. He holstered his gun, grabbed Tom by the collar. You're spending the night in my jail. And when you sober up, we're going to have a talk about leaving the Crows alone. She's mine, Tom mumbled through swelling lips. I paid. You paid nothing for nothing. The sheriff dragged him toward the door. Daniel, Mara, get your supplies and go home. And Tom, you come near them again, I'll arrest you for real. Assault, harassment, the works. You hear me? Tom didn't answer, just let himself be hauled away. The moment they were gone, Mara's legs went weak. Daniel caught her, held her steady. You all right? I think so. She looked up at him. His cheek was already bruising, blood dripped from a cut over his eye. You're hurt. I've had worse. He touched her face gently. You were brave, standing up to him like that. I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared? He smiled slightly. Someone smart told me that once. Mrs. Henderson emerged from the storeroom with cloth and water. Let me clean that cut, Daniel. And Mara, your fabric is in the back. On the house, after what you just went through, it's the least I can do. They stayed in town only long enough to gather supplies and let Daniel's face be tended. As they rode home, Mara felt something shift inside her. She'd faced Tom Hewitt, the man who'd wanted to buy her, who'd claimed ownership of her body, and she'd stood her ground, told him the truth, watched Daniel defend her honor without apologizing for her strength. I'm not scared anymore, she said as they climbed the mountain trail. Of Tom. Of everything. I'm still careful, still aware. But I'm not that girl by the river anymore. I'm someone new. Daniel reached back, squeezed her hand. You've always been strong. You just needed time to remember it. That night after dinner and reading lessons, Mara stood by the bed watching Daniel spread his blankets on the floor. He'd been doing this for 3 months now, sharing the bed at night, but maintaining careful distance, never pushing, never demanding. Daniel, stop. He looked up, blankets in hand. What? I don't want you on the floor anymore. Mara, we talked about this. I know what we talked about. I know I said I wasn't ready. She took a breath, gathering courage. I'm ready now. He went very still. You're sure? I'm sure. She moved to him, took the blankets from his hands, dropped them on the floor. I want to be your wife, really your wife, in every way. We don't have to rush. It's been 3 months. That's not rushing. She reached up, touched his bruised cheek. You've been patient. You've given me time to heal. But I'm tired of being broken. I want to be whole. With you. Daniel's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. If at any point you change your mind, I won't. But if you do, just say, promise me you'll say. I promise. He kissed her, then deep and slow, his hands gentle as they pulled her close. Mara kissed back, letting herself feel the want that had been building for weeks, the desire that she'd thought her father had killed, but was just sleeping, waiting for the right person to wake it. They moved to the bed together. Daniel's hands were careful as they worked the buttons of her dress, asking permission with every touch, every kiss. Mara's hands shook as she helped him remove his shirt, traced the scars on his chest and back, evidence of a war fought long before she was born. You're beautiful, he whispered against her skin. I'm scarred. So am I. We match. What happened next was tender and awkward, and perfect in its imperfection. Daniel was gentle, patient, stopping when she tensed, waiting for her to breathe and nod before continuing. Mara cried not from pain or fear, but from relief. From the knowledge that intimacy didn't have to be violence, that her body could feel pleasure, instead of shame, that she could give herself to someone without losing herself in the process. Afterward, they lay tangled together, breathless and laughing softly at their own fumbling attempts at closeness. That was... Daniel stopped, searching for words. Real, Mara finished. That was real. Yeah. He pulled her against his chest, his heart still racing under her ear. Are you all right? Better than all right. She tilted her face up to kiss him. Thank you for waiting, for letting me choose the time. Thank you for choosing me at all. They fell asleep like that, no blankets between them, no distance, no fear. Just two people who'd found each other in the worst possible way and built something beautiful anyway. Winter arrived with fury 2 weeks later. Snow came fast and heavy, burying the mountains under white silence. Daniel finished the cabin addition just before the worst of it hit a second room that would someday be a nursery, though neither of them spoke that hope aloud yet. They spent the long winter nights reading by firelight, Daniel teaching Mara more complicated words, Mara teaching Daniel how to cook things beyond basic stew. They made love often, learning each other's bodies, the way they'd learned each other's minds, slowly, carefully, with patience and occasional laughter when things didn't work quite right. I never thought I could be happy, Mara said one night lying in bed while snow piled against the windows. Not really happy. I thought the best I could hope for was survival. And now I have this. Have you. Have a home and safety and... She pressed her hand to her stomach, where she'd been feeling strange flutterings for the past week. And maybe something more. Daniel's hand covered hers. You think, I don't know? It's too early to be sure, but maybe. His eyes went bright with something like wonder. A baby. Don't get excited yet. It might be nothing. But it wasn't nothing. As winter deepened and Mara's body changed, the truth became undeniable. By February she was certain, and by March her belly showed a small, definite curve. We're going to be parents, Daniel said one morning, his hand on her stomach feeling the baby kick. Are you scared? Terrified. I don't know how to be a father. What if I do it wrong? Then we'll figure it out together. She covered his hand with hers. Same way we figured out everything else. Spring arrived late that year, snow lingering into April. When the trails finally cleared enough for travel, Sheriff Morrison rode up the mountain with news. Your father's dead, he told Mara without preamble. Fell off his horse drunk 2 weeks ago. Broke his neck. Mara felt nothing. No grief, no relief, just empty acknowledgement. I see. He had some property, a shack mostly worthless. But legally, it's yours now. Thought you should know." After the sheriff left, Daniel found her sitting on the cabin step, staring at nothing. "You all right?" "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel." "Feel whatever you feel. There's no supposed to." "I'm not sad he's dead. Does that make me terrible?" "No. It makes you honest." Daniel sat beside her. "He hurt you for 19 years. You don't owe him tears." "I keep thinking, what if he'd been different? What if he'd been kind? Would I have married you anyway? No way to know. I'm glad it happened the way it did. Is that wrong? To be glad for something that started so terrible?" Daniel pulled her close. "Nothing about being glad for what we have now is wrong. The terrible parts made us who we are, made us ready for each other. Maybe that's how it was supposed to be." "The wound is the place where the light enters you," Mara quoted softly. "Yeah, exactly that." Summer arrived with warmth and new growth. Mara's belly grew round and full. Daniel built a cradle from pine, sanded it smooth, lined it with soft fabric. They talked about names, about futures, about the life they were building. On a hot August afternoon with thunderclouds building over the peaks, Mara's labor began. Daniel rode down the mountain for the midwife, a Ute woman named Ayanna, who lived near town and had delivered half the babies in the territory. She arrived calm and efficient, took one look at Mara, and settled in for the long wait. Labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Daniel paced useless and anxious while Ayanna and Mara worked through each contraction. When the pain got too intense, when Mara screamed that she couldn't do it anymore, Daniel held her hands and told her she was the strongest person he knew. "I'm not strong," she gasped between contractions. "I'm dying." "You're not dying. You're bringing life. There's a difference." The baby came at sunset, a girl with dark hair and her father's eyes. She wailed immediately, loud and healthy. Ayanna cleaned her, wrapped her, placed her on Mara's chest. "She's perfect," the midwife said. "Strong lungs, good color. You did well, Mama." Mara stared at the tiny face, the small fingers curled against her breast, and felt something crack wide open in her chest. This was hers. This life, this person, this perfect little being who would never know hunger or fear or cruelty if Mara had anything to say about it. Daniel knelt beside the bed, his hand trembling as he touched his daughter's head. "She's so small." "She won't be for long." Mara smiled through exhausted tears. "What should we name her?" They'd discussed names for months, but could never agree. Now, looking at their daughter's face, Daniel said quietly, "Hope. I want to name her Hope." "Why Hope?" "Because that's what she is. Proof that terrible things can lead to something beautiful. That broken people can build whole futures." He kissed Mara's forehead. "She's our hope. Our light that came through the wound." Mara looked at her daughter Hope Crowe, born from violence and salvation, from shame and courage, from a desperate father's cruelty and a lonely cowboy's mercy. She was the answer to questions Mara hadn't known to ask, the future built from the ruins of the past. "Hope," Mara whispered. "Perfect." Ayanna left the next morning after teaching them how to nurse, how to change the cloth diapers, how to survive the sleepless nights ahead. As she rode away, she turned back once. "You two did good. That baby's lucky to have you." Daniel and Mara stood in the doorway, Hope sleeping in her father's arms, and watched the midwife disappear down the trail. Then they turned back to their cabin, their home, and the life they'd fought so hard to build. The years that followed weren't easy. There were hard winters and lean seasons, illness and injury moments when the past tried to drag them backward. But there was also laughter and love. More children. 2 boys who filled the cabin with noise and chaos, anniversaries that marked how far they'd come from that terrible day by the river. People in town eventually stopped talking about the scandalous marriage, started calling them respectable instead. The Crows who lived in the mountains, who kept to themselves mostly, but came to town for supplies and church on Sundays, whose children were polite and well-fed, and clearly loved. On their 10th anniversary, Daniel took Mara back to the river. Not the exact spot that would have been too much, but close enough to see the water to remember. "You ever regret it?" he asked. "Any of it?" "No, not one moment." She leaned against him, their 3 children playing in the grass nearby. "Do you?" "Never. Best decision I ever made." He pulled her close. 40 years I waited to find something worth protecting. Then you stood there broken and terrified, and I knew. You were it. You were the reason I survived the war, survived the loneliness, survived everything. Mara turned to face him. "You saved my life that day." "No, we saved each other." And standing there by the river where everything had started, with their children's laughter echoing off the water and the afternoon sun warm on their faces, Mara knew it was true. They'd both been drowning in different ways for different reasons, and they'd reached for each other in desperation, found not just rescue, but redemption. Not just survival, but love. The wound had been deep and terrible, but the light that entered through it had illuminated everything. Shown them who they could become, what they could build, how strong they were when they chose to stand together. Daniel Crowe had lifted more than a stone that day by the river. He'd lifted a future, a family, a life built on the simple revolutionary act of choosing compassion over cruelty, love over loneliness, hope over despair. And Mara Crowe, once Mayfield, once merchandise, once nothing more than her father's shame, had become someone new. A wife, a mother, a woman who knew her own strength because someone had been brave enough to show her she was worth saving. They walked back to their home together, hand in hand, 3 children trailing behind, and the river sang its ancient song behind them. The water that had once carried her shame now reflected only sky and trees, and the truth that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the brightest endings. Some vows didn't need witnesses, Daniel had once said, just 2 souls brave enough to make them. They'd been brave that day by the river, and they'd been brave every day since. Building something real from the wreckage, proving that mercy was stronger than cruelty, that chosen family was as binding as blood, and that love, real hard-won, imperfect love, could heal wounds no one else could see. The lonely cowboy at 40 had claimed a wife. The broken girl had found her strength. Together they'd built a home, raised children, and turned tragedy into triumph through nothing more complicated than daily acts of kindness, patience, and unwavering commitment to the vow they'd spoken in anger that became their salvation. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.